everyone, and welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm Ross Wilsey.
And I'm Mike Wade.
Each episode, we sit down to talk about what it means to live well, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and beyond.
We'll look at how wellness shapes us as individuals, families, communities, and even the wider world around us.
Through real stories and honest conversations, we'll explore what hope looks like and how it grows right here in the New River Valley.
Thanks for joining us. This is Voices of Hope.
Our guest today is Pasha Palanker, a retired U.S. Army Special Operations Master Sergeant whose experiences have taken him from some of the most intense moments imaginable to a deeply personal journey of healing and growth. Pasha recently gained some unexpected attention when a crosswind gust slammed him into the jumbotron at Virginia Tech's 2026 spring game during a planned parachute drop. After facing some harrowing experiences during combat operations in Iraq, Pasha returned home to a different kind of battle as he struggled with the lasting effects of the trauma he faced overseas. Today, he speaks openly about what it took to confront those challenges, take accountability for his life, and find a path toward recovery. And yes, we'll talk about the recent mishap at Lane Stadium. Pasha, thank you so much for joining us today on the Voices of Hope podcast. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me on. Grateful to be here.
Absolutely. So for those of you, for our listeners who may not be aware, you were the parachuter who crashed into the scoreboard at the Virginia Tech spring game back in April. Can you just for the sake of our curiosity, can you give us a brief rundown of the chain of events that afternoon?
Sure thing. Well, before I get into what happened that day, I'll just say that ultimately, whatever the reasons were, I'm responsible. There's no excuses here. We get a ton of credit when everything goes well and we land on the field and applause and all of that. So when things don't go well, we get the credit for that as well.
Gotcha.
But what happened that day was so I have 1,100 jumps, dozens of jumps into stadiums all over this nation: Rose Bowl, Naval Academy, Stanford, University of Cincinnati. And I've never experienced anything like what happened that day with the winds. They drastically changed from just a few minutes prior to us exiting the aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
And the direction, the speed, and then the wind shears that came in. That was not forecasted, not expected. If this had happened just a few minutes before, the jump would have been canceled.
Right.
Because we have somebody sitting at the lip of the stadium measuring the winds. So what happened was I was coming into land. As you can see in the video, I was pretty high up. Everything looked good. And as I started to get lower, I was getting pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming straight down, and then when the gust would come in, I would get pushed back. That means the winds were above 25 knots. Our limit is 14.
Wow.
That's why it would have been canceled.
Right.
So it looked like I was gonna land in the stadium, and even if I would have had a chance as I got lower with the winds coming down, the problem was there's the fang wire that holds the net, the goalpost
Right.
net.
Yes.
And there was a big risk for me to take. Do I try to make it, and then the flag that's 40 feet below me getting caught in there, and then I get slammed? So all of this is running through my head in a 5-7 second span. So
Right.
I had some choices to make. I could have landed in the stands, but that flag is anchored by a 26-pound weight. Could have hurt somebody, and there's a lot of kids there. My body weight would have hurt somebody. So then, as I decided I'm gonna land off, I just initiated the turn, and you can see there's a crosswind gust that came in.
Yeah.
It just slammed me into the jumbotron. So that's what happened.
Yeah, that looked pretty severe. That last shear just hitting you so hard and pushing you into that. So
Yeah.
man, and I think I mentioned to you in an email that my one of my kids was at the game, and I just remember him and his grandparents texting us and saying, "Oh my gosh, you'll never believe what happened." And that was sort of in the middle of everything, but we were all so relieved to hear it, an hour or two later, that you were okay, maybe a little banged up. So I'm just curious,
Yeah.
is your healing going well? And
I think it's going as well as it could have been. I hit so hard.
I bet.
I had the wind knocked out of me. It took me a little bit to just regain my breathing and figure out where I was. Thank God the parachute got hung up because it doesn't look like it from the videos because it looks like the bleachers are right there. But there's a road between the stadium and the
Mm-hmm.
jumbotron, and it was like 5 or 6 stories down. And there's a fence with spike waiting for me at the bottom. Thank goodness that canopy got stuck on the jumbotron. And but I'm looking down, and these gusts, these wind shears keep coming, and then when they do, they reinflate the canopy, and
Mm.
I feel being lifted up, and it makes me. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to manage the canopy from reinflating, so I get blown off of the jumbotron and
Right.
go all the way down. Can't say enough good things about the fire department. The first truck was there within a few minutes. Their letter was too short to get to me. And then the second one was right behind him. And they got me down and were incredible throughout the whole experience.
That's awesome.
Well, it's obviously a situation that could have gone far worse.
Yeah. But that's the story of my life. It's these unrealistic things happen to me. It looks terrible. And then I end up walking away almost
Mm-hmm.
unscathed,
Yeah.
with something to learn, to gain from the experience, then I'm able to share that with others and make an impact on this world.
Right.
I feel like that's a pretty good lead into our next question, Pasha. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about the circumstances that led to you becoming someone who speaks publicly about resilience, as well as someone who advocates for reducing the stigma around mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a retired Army Master Sergeant. I spent 17 years in the Army, 14 of that in special operations, multiple deployments during my time in service. I've been wounded twice. I've had a face-to-face encounter with a suicide bomber, where he was just feet away from me, and the logical thing for me was to duck for cover. But
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, this anger drove me to take action, which I did. And my action slowed down the suicide bomber, bought us enough time, created separation, and then he detonated about 10, 15 feet away from me.
Wow.
So I've been through, my share of traumatic experiences, physical injuries. And what's interesting is, physical injuries, we're quick to take care of that because we can't function. When we're hurt physically, we're quick
Right.
to go to the doctor. But when it comes to mental health, it's very easy to neglect. And so that was me. It took 10 years from my first traumatic experiences in combat until I hit my first rock bottom for me to realize that I need to do something about it. And the first few years, I was just not aware. You don't know what the
Mm-hmm.
signs and symptoms of PTSD or just emotional trauma is. It's not what I thought it was, what I've seen in the movies,
Right.
waking up screaming in the middle of the night, which is not what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years into it, I was like, you know what, there's something there. I should do something about it, but then I was kind of ignorant. It's like, nah, it's just gonna go away on its own. It will take care of itself. Meanwhile, I kept slowly spiraling further down. And then the past few years, like I knew that I was struggling and I needed help, but I was afraid. I was afraid of the stigma that's associated with
Sure.
getting mental health help.
Yeah.
So I didn't. And what it took for me was going back on another deployment back to Iraq, where I got hurt originally the first time, and it was 10 years since getting hurt there once again. And at the same time, all the stuff that was bottled up deep down inside kind of unzipped and came up to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time at home, physically I was injured, but it was not as big of a deal as emotionally, psychologically. I was just completely broken down and fallen apart.
Right.
And I would imagine that there are layers of stigma that you're working through around that because, there's the one thing of just being a guy, and not wanting to come across as being weak. And then there's the whole other component of that with being in the military,
Hmm.
and being able to come clean and talk about what you're struggling with. I'm sure that was difficult.
Yes, yes. So there absolutely layers upon layers. There's also fears of losing your security clearance,
Hmm.
because you know that's one of the question sections as part of your revalidation for security clearance. There's fear of losing your deployment status, getting pulled off of that, jump status, all kinds of things that I was afraid of that turned out to be baseless.
Hmm.
Right.
Because after I went and started to receive help, none of it became true.
Mm. And I'm just curious how, like looking back on it now, how did the struggles you were having with PTSD and other mental health issues affect the people around you?
The first moment when I realized that I need to go help was seeing how I was transferring my PTSD symptoms onto my kids.
Hmm.
When I started to see my anger in them
Hmm.
and how they would treat each other, that's when like that aha moment was like I need to do something about it.
Yeah.
So it affects us, but through us it affects everyone else who we touch, who's in our life. And sadly, it's always the people that are the closest to us that get the brunt of our mental health struggles.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Pasha, you've shared that you survived numerous physical threats in combat, and obviously your recent parachuting accident. Yet you've openly talked about your mental health struggles as being some of the most difficult to overcome. Why is it, do you think, that emotional suffering can be harder to confront than physical danger?
Emotional suffering is easier to ignore.
Yeah.
It's easier to underestimate because it's not immediate.
Hmm.
And what happened with me is, that's what I would do. I would numb that pain instead of facing it. And as a result of that numbing, every day my life would get just a little bit worse.
Hmm.
And I did not realize it until, days turned to weeks, weeks into months, months into years. And then slowly you lose yourself in that and you lose your identity in that process. Um, and then by the time that something should be done, you feel like you're in such a deep hole that it's impossible to come out. So the bottom line is mental health, emotional trauma. It's just easier to ignore than it is to ignore physical pain. And
Yeah.
then on top of it all, the stigma that's associated with getting help for mental health, it just gives you another reason not to take care of it and
Right.
and just think that it's going to take care of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, and that's what makes what you're doing so important, I think. And just getting the word out that this is the same as treating a physical illness or an injury,
Yeah.
to get people more comfortable with just getting help for mental health needs.
Yeah. I'll just use this example that I use quite a bit, and I think it helps to relate. Like, let's say I got shot in my thigh, like right where it's just the muscle, and a bullet is wedged in there, and there's no structural damage. I can walk, right,
Hmm.
but the bullet is in there, so I just cover it up, bandage it up, and there's some pain there. But instead of taking the bullet out and cleaning the wound, I'm just gonna cover it and then take pain meds, and I can function. I can continue to function, but every day that infection, all that damage in there, it's festering.
Hmm.
It's growing. It's getting worse. And even though on the surface it looks good, on the inside, like your body is deteriorating.
Yeah.
You would never
Yeah.
do that with a physical injury, but we
Right.
we do that with our emotional trauma and with our mental health. That's exactly what we do,
It is.
and that's why we get to a point to where we break. And those who don't break, they just go all the way to the end. They end up dying by their own hand.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So well put.
Yeah. Well, Pasha, would I'd love to hear about your healing journey. Would you mind talking a little bit about that and how you were able to turn the corner and what was some of the most impactful and important parts of that journey for you?
Yeah. Um, so for me, it happened in 2020. I was in another, and it's been like my first rock bottom was in 2015, and
Hmm.
then I decided to go get help and the help that I was getting made me feel better. And what happens is you the things that make you feel better, once the problem goes away, you stop doing them. So then you slowly start falling back into it.
Right.
And then it just there's just something about it. I could feel myself falling back into it. And then even though I was aware, knew what was coming, it's like, nah, this the ignorance is still there. But what happened with me was I was getting better, stopped taking care of myself, started to get worse, and then it got amplified by a parachuting incident in 2018 while I
Hmm.
was still in the army, where I'm physically hurt again. I can't really take care of myself. Um, like my routine is broken because of my physical injury. I get forced into medical retirement from the army, and then on top of it all, COVID happens, and
Hmm.
then I'm isolated at home. I have a very hard time with stimulation from all the explosions that I have experienced during my career, and I have 4 boys. So being at home with a lot of light noise movement stimulation, I would lock myself in the office and spend my days like in the fetal position, basically, just
Wow.
trying to make it through the day, while feeling this suffocating tension in my chest, like there's 245-pound plates on my chest all the time.
Hmm.
So spending a few weeks in that place, eventually my mind started to go numb and I started to shut down. I stopped caring about consequences, and I just started to feel like suicide became logical and it
Yeah.
made sense. I'm not able to be a dad to my kids, and I'm being forced out of the army. All that logic was there. It was flawed because of who I was, but it was there. So instead of taking the suicide route, I drove myself to ER, where I got admitted to psychiatric facility. And while I was there in the psychiatric facility, it wasn't pleasant, but it was what I needed. It was what I needed. I felt my mind start to settle down, and I started to kind of think about my life. And what I realized was, and this was my kind of awakening moment, turnaround point, was I felt like a victim of my circumstances. I felt like the doctors were letting me down. I felt like VA was over medicating me. I felt like it was, I was treated unfairly by being forced out of the army. I felt like I had more to give, and I was a victim, victim, victim. And as a victim, all I saw were problems,
Yeah.
and that was the fuel for my spiral.
Mm.
So, and I decided that that was enough. I was the one that volunteered to serve. Yes, the care was not great, but ultimately it was my responsibility to get better. Once I've decided to take responsibility, that's when everything turned around. It's just, instead of, once you take responsibility, you stop being a victim, and instead of focusing on the problems, I started to see solutions.
Yeah.
And that's when I got out, I got into self-development. I started listening to podcasts and read books and just learning more about human nature. And then most importantly, trying to find different things that would give me relief from what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
Healthy things, not things that would numb me, but things that would heal me.
Right.
So that was my turnaround point. And if you guys want to, we can get into some of the things that helped me.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, so often it just feels impossible to move past that one point of like, well, this is hopeless. But then moving to the point where you can drive yourself to the ER or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I mean, amazing that you were able to do that. But yes, I think I would, and our listeners would love to hear what's something that somebody else going through a mental health struggle should keep in mind. Like, what would you tell them about how to face those struggles and then eventually just reconnect with some kind of joy or meaning or purpose in their life?
Yeah. So I'll just tell you what happened with me and kind of how I started to discover things. So when I got out of the psychiatric facility, I was okay for about a week, and then I started to feel that world closing in and collapsing on me again, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go back to where I just came from.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this Forrest Gump moment where I'm just gonna go run. There's a trail by me that's 150 miles. So I texted my wife. It's like, there's 8 hours of daylight. I'm gonna run 4 hours, and hopefully I can make it back. And if not, call non-emergency number and just tell them where to look for me.
Wow.
So luckily there's wells where you can pump water along the way, and I had a little camelback and a few Cliff Bars. But I ended up stumbling my way like 36 miles or something like that. And I've never
Wow.
ran a marathon before that. And I felt beat up physically, but emotionally I felt like a sense of relief and peace. For 2 weeks I felt really good until it started to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was like, I'm just gonna go run again, not 36 miles, but I'm gonna go on a 5 mile, 8 mile run. And this is how I discovered running was became my lifeline, because it would starve my anger out of energy. It would help me clear my head and keep me grounded and present.
Right.
So anytime I'd feel that tension, I would just go for a run. If I couldn't run, I would walk. It's
Mm-hmm.
just any kind of physical activity where you're moving for an hour, and it doesn't have to be exhaustive. It's just
Yep.
moving. So once I discovered running, I started to look for a nonprofit where I could get mental health treatment. And once I started to look for it, I found it. And then got into therapy. I talked through some of my traumatic experiences, which helped to loosen their grip on my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned about the impact of sleep, nutrition, exercise, how important it is for mental health, and how they all feed into each other.
Yep.
Sleep is the most important thing, because if you don't sleep well, you don't have the energy in the morning. If you don't have the energy in the morning, you're going to have shorter bandwidth to deal with life stressors. And
Yep.
if your bandwidth is not there, you're going to snap at people around you. You're going to not do well at work, which will make you feel like crap. When you feel like
Right.
crap, the way you're going to make yourself feel better is usually by eating some junk food. Junk food drains you out of more energy, so you're probably not going to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And then to finish off your day, because you feel like crap, you're gonna drink
Yeah.
to go to sleep, which ruins your sleep, and then
Right. It's a vicious
you wake
cycle.
up the same way in the next morning. So
Yeah.
so just reversing that, so finding the time to exercise, paying attention to what I eat, and then cutting back. I never stopped fully drinking, but I stopped drinking to numb my pain.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it's that simple, man. It's just paying attention to yourself and your body, and just showing up for yourself.
Mm.
The most important thing is, for those that are struggling, is you can't expect for things to get better overnight. It just doesn't happen that way.
Right.
Yeah.
What we need is to feel like today was just a little bit better than yesterday, and to know that you showed up for yourself in the smallest way. And then you start to feel that feeling of making progress. And that
Mm-hmm.
feeling is what you're after. That feeling is intoxicating. It's encouraging, because that means tomorrow you're going to show up for yourself again. And then slowly, one day at a time, like we destroy ourselves slowly one day at a time, and we rebuild ourselves slowly
Right.
one day at a time. That's how you turn things around.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but simple does not mean that it's easy.
Absolutely not.
But it's that simple. Just finding a way you can show up for yourself every day in the smallest way that you possibly can, so that there's no excuses not to do it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Pasha, do you still run these days?
I do, but not as much as I used to. I used
Yeah.
to routinely, run, do 5 to 10 miles, at least twice a week. Now, instead of running, a few years ago, we're taking my son to a wrestling practice. I discovered jujitsu while I was
Oh,
waiting
yeah.
on him while he was wrestling. I was on my phone, and I felt like guilty that I'm on my phone while I could be training in the adult class jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
It was very humbling experience. It didn't matter what I did in the army. I had these 20-year-old kids just, have their way with me, but I stuck to it, and now it has become such a big part of my life. So
Oh, that's cool.
so as long as I'm healthy, and most of the times when I'm not healthy, jujitsu has replaced running in my life. But with that
Oh,
said, I'm going to Scotland next week to do this 54-mile race through the Scottish Highlands with a bunch of
Whew.
veterans.
Wow.
Oh man.
and friends. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Pasha, if you could sit down with the version of yourself that was struggling the most, and when you found yourself in the darkest moments of your life, if you could go back and sit down with that person, what would you tell him?
Keep going.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how bad it gets. Keep going. Take responsibility and learn how to show up for yourself uh, uh, every day in the
Mm-hmm.
smallest way, and find one small thing to be grateful for.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to be whiny when you're in and feeling sorry for yourself when you're grateful at the same time. So
Yeah.
it's like one replaces the other. That's why gratitude is so important.
Mm-hmm.
It's once your mind is in the gratitude state of mind, you're gonna find more things to be grateful for instead of more things to complain about.
Right.
And it's just it's a huge part of this recovery process. Gratitude.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you've mentioned several already, running and now jujitsu. What are some of your other favorite ways that you maintain your overall wellness? Physical, mental, everything else.
Yeah, one of the easiest things it's keeping a journal.
Mm-hmm.
I use journal for gratitude. I use journal to, talk to myself about what happened today, the mistakes that I made, and how I can do better next time, and what I need to do to fix them. And with a journal, there's, if a lot of people can't run, it's raining outside. There's lots of excuses for things that are hard to do, and
Right.
journaling is not one of them. That's one of the easiest ways to learn to show up for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, like I learned about journaling from a bunch of podcasts. It just constantly I kept seeing it on a repeat. And my first my first journal entries were like, the date is like there. I did it. I wrote an entry in the journal, and it would go like that for weeks. There, I showed up for myself and nothing
Right.
else. I wouldn't put anything else. But then the fact that I did that, I told myself I was gonna do it, and I did it without any substantial stuff in there, just made me feel better about myself.
Yeah.
I said what I did, what I said that I was gonna do,
Right.
and just that in itself goes a long way. And then and then eventually just like, well, I started to add more substance to what I was writing in there. It just happened naturally, but the bottom line was I showed up, and it's effective, and it helps if you can't sleep at night. If you just pick up pen and paper in that journal and you just write it out, whatever is running through your head on repeat,
Yep.
it's like pulling it out of your brain and putting it on paper, and then you find relief, and
Yeah, that's so true.
helps
Yeah.
with
I've,
sleep.
I've done that before where I have woken up in the middle of the night and had to write something down, and then magically, yeah, it helps me go
Yeah,
back to sleep. So
so simple.
yeah, it is.
Well, you are a guest on the Voices of Folk podcast, and we obviously could not let you end your time with us without asking what the word hope means to you.
Hope is believing in a brighter future. Hope is moving forward one step at a time, even though you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
As long as there's hope, and there should always be hope, you just got to keep moving.
Hmm.
If you keep moving, you'll find a way out.
Yeah. I like it.
Well, Pasha, this has been a great conversation and one that I know I'll look back on, and I know that listeners will enjoy, hearing all the things that you've been able to do to improve your life. And we really appreciate the time that you spent. I will just say, do you have any final words of wisdom before we end our time today?
I'll just say, like, if you're listening to this podcast and you heard this message, you have what it takes to drastically change your life for the better.
Mm.
And whatever it is that you're going through, if you choose to take responsibility and you start facing your demons, your problems, you have to develop strength that you wouldn't have otherwise if you didn't go through what you're going through. And for me, looking back on my life, I'm grateful for everything that I had to face, because it developed parts of me that never would have been developed. And at this point, it feels like I have superpowers compared to people that have not gone through what I went through.
Right.
And that applies to everyone who's dealing with something that nobody else understands or can relate to.
Right. Yeah.
So face your demons one step, one day at a time, and you'll develop strengths that you never would have had otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day you'll be grateful for what you're going through right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great way to wrap up our conversation, Pasha. You've really given us a lot to think about, and we're just so grateful for your time. We certainly appreciate your service to the country. Are so glad that no one, including you, was seriously injured in the spring game incident, and we just really appreciate the time that you've spent with us today, and wish you all the best moving forward.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. And I gotta say, I got so much love from the Hokie Nation.
Yeah.
So many requests to come back and jump into the stadium. I gotta express my gratitude to all the people that were there in the stands and the love and support they've given me.
That's awesome. Well, again, we're glad that you could be on today, and we thank you so much for your time, Pasha.
All right, guys. Happy to be here.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Hope.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love for you to rate and review the podcast and help us spread the word.
Voices of Hope is a production of New River Valley Community Services.
To learn more or listen to past episodes, visit nrvcs.org/podcast.
And remember, hope grows when we share it.
So keep the conversation going, and we'll talk to you next time on Voices of Hope.